Hi, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our Going for Gold award submission writing event. I'm really pleased to say that we've managed to secure the time of John Hyde, who from the Law Gazette, who many of you will know. He's a very busy guy. He's also got 2 children at home and a working partner, so I feel his pain, but I appreciate him taking the time today to help. Originally, so most of you will know that I have obviously a marketing and events consultancy, and so I was speaking to Charlotte Lation and Dylan Jones-Evans, who set up the Wales Legal Awards, which I am the event manager for, and we were discussing the fact that quite a few people have gone on, obviously, on furlough. Teams are up against the wall, but these legal awards are really, really important to celebrate the success that you've had over the past 12 months. It's really important to reward and celebrate your staff and your firms. So we felt it was important to put an event on to help you put some submissions together. Some top tips, what to avoid. John is a seasoned awards judge. He's judged the Manchester Legal Awards, the Modern Law Awards on a number of occasions, and is now a judge for the Wales Legal Awards this year, which is fantastic, and I'm really grateful to him for that. There's a mix of people here from professional services, from the legal sector, marketing, people responsible for putting these together on an annual basis, and some who might not be. So we're going to have a Q&A session at the end. So what I'll do is John and I will have a bit of a run through of some of our tips and advice. If you haven't joined us on Zoom before, or even if you have, just to remind you, there is a chat function. So there's a little speech bubble at the bottom of your screen. If you click on that, you can chat to everybody in the room. You can make a note for us to pick up later. You can email me chat to me directly. I'm going to keep you all on mute for now, just because normally we record the session so they can be shared more widely. So obviously you can send this on to people in your firm afterwards. And so that means that the speakers will be the ones that will be on the screen. So any background noise will just be eliminated. So if you don't mind keeping yourselves on mute just to the Q&A, that'd be great. And then we can go through some of the questions or comments that you might have. So I just wanted to start by just setting a bit of an agenda. So we said we're going to cover what to include in your awards, how to be clear, bold, evidence your candidacy for an award, what the judges are looking for, which is where John will come in. And we're actually going to start off with John shortly. Some common mistakes and how to avoid them. There are a few, and how to make a submission work hard for you. And something that when I spoke to John originally about this, we kind of both feel, oh, these are really obvious points, but actually they're not always. We see these things time and time again from the other side. So we really hope that some of the things we say today will help. So I just want to do a quick introduction on the purpose of some of the awards programmes and what they're looking to do. So obviously they're looking to celebrate the sector, and particularly in legal, it's holding firms, individuals, teams out as exemplars to others, and inspiring them and showing them that, you know, things can be done no matter what the size of your firm. So but we really want you, I'd really advise you as a marketing consultant to consider the awards programmes that you want to enter. These submissions take a lot of time and effort. Some of them, like the Wales Legal Awards, do have interview processes behind them when you're shortlisted. Obviously there's the celebration at the end, so sometimes there's a financial investment there as well. But, you know, is this something that will really help your profile within the sector? So are you looking to recruit? Are you looking to expand your team? Are you looking to collaborate with other law firms? There are lots of benefits as to why you would want to have a legal award within the sector, not just something obviously that will showcase to clients, perhaps if it was a general property award, for example. So understand the ethos behind the awards. Are they credible? Do they have a really strong culture of celebrating the sector? Is it something that perhaps isn't quite related to people, you know, is it set up by the right kind of person? So for example, the Law Society Excellence Awards, I think we all know the authority that come behind those. And how might they profile you afterwards? Are you comfortable with that? So I've noticed that, again, going back to the Law Society Awards, they have spoken to people quite a lot recently about what they've had, what they've found over the past year, how the awards helped them, perhaps looking back on previous winners. So there's lots of content going on around post-awards that's worth bearing in mind as well. Just a point before I hand over to John. So it's worth bearing in mind that the judges that are chosen to join the panel, they're often an independent helicopter view of the profession. So once often they've received notable accolades themselves, they're high profile. There's someone like John. I mean, he's got nearly 16,000 followers on Twitter. He has quite the authority in the market, but also a fantastic view. He's speaking to firms on a daily basis, so he's getting to know not just the day-to-day, but also how they're growing. They've got that authority. They've also got a current view of the sector. Sometimes they're grandparents of the sector. So John and I have both worked with Mike Napier, who really has established a lot in terms of the PI market. So they've got, perhaps more of a long-term heritage view about the progression of the sector. They really know what excellence and outstanding looks like, and they're keen to help showcase those that have set a new benchmark for legal services and professionalism in the sector. Sponsor judges can also add value. While they're undoubtedly and understandably looking to raise their profile, the fact is that their business, they're working with law firms on a day-to-day, so they have, if they've got the budget to align themselves with a national awards scheme, it does mean that they're working quite hand in hand with the sector, so they can see sometimes the inner workings that other judges might miss. So I'm going to hand over to John to see what the judges are looking for, and then I'm going to go through a little bit of detail about what I would recommend when I'm working with clients. So John, over to you.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thanks very much for the introduction, Emma. I always feel a bit inadequate when I'm judging these awards because, you guys are the sort of success stories, and I'm just the one sort of casting an eye over it. So congratulations in advance for all that you've achieved in the last year. It's my job to sort of give a few tips and hints about what makes a good submission and what makes a bad one. Like Emma said, I've read quite a few over the years, and there's a few things that recur that people do that slightly get on our nerves, to be honest, and make it less likely they're going to win. I'm just going to share something, hopefully, that's going to work for me, just to so you don't have to look at my face the whole time. Hopefully that's worked. So the first thing to think about is the judges. Who are the judges? For example, I'm based in Essex, not Wales, sadly, and there might be things that I wouldn't understand that you might have to go into more detail about. So think about who's actually going to read your submission. If you say that you've advised on a building in Charles Street, Cardiff or something, I might not know the significance of that. So sort of try and explain that for us. And assume we don't know necessarily. I don't necessarily know if you're a personal injury firm, conveyancing firm. Actually, it sounds silly, but sort of explain that at the start. Tell us who you are and what you do. But also don't take us for mugs either. I've got Google and I can check certain things. And you do see some submissions where you think that just can't be right. And we check and it turns out not to be. Sometimes we might have had a long day. We might have read 20 submissions in a day and we might be a bit grouchy. So I think it's quite important that you don't waffle, which I realise the irony of me waffling on about this, but it's quite important you don't waffle. So, for example, with the best will in the world, I don't care about the history of your firm, okay? It was wonderful that it was created 250 years ago, and congratulations on the anniversary, but it's not relevant, okay? So just leave it out. You haven't got many words and you don't want to annoy the judges with those that you do use. Equally, I know this is going to sound like counterintuitive, but you don't need to tell me how much you care about your clients, okay? Everybody cares about their clients. You all care about your clients, okay? Take that as read. The number of submissions that say, we put our clients first. And I think, of course you do. Like if you don't put your clients first, by all means tell me, and that would be quite interesting and novel. But otherwise, assume that I know that, okay? And in terms of waffle, I mean sort of things like, don't just say what you do for staff. Don't say, we put staff first, we care about our staff, okay? They're sort of quite wishy-washy things. So, for example, in the Manchester Awards, there was a firm that said, we care about our staff. And then they put a load of bullet points about what they did. Free haircuts for when they're having a night out, like mental health sort of mentoring, like actual specifics about how they care about staff, not just that they do care about staff. Okay, so I found that to be really important. So try not to waffle. And linked to that is answer the questions. Okay, so I'm not sure what the format will be of the Wales Awards, but another awards that I've done is maybe 4 or 5 questions, and I tend to give a mark out of 10 for the answer for each one. I don't tend to sort of give a broad mark. And the number of times that, you know, there's a 9, 8, 9, and then they haven't answered the last question properly, and it's like your GCSEs, you know, you have to read the question and answer it as it's asked. So it sounds obvious, but answer the specific question. Okay, don't just waffle on about what you think we want to hear. Make sure you answer the question. Another one that sounds a bit obvious, but is such a constant problem with submissions is localize. Okay, so there might be some firms, particularly in the cities, that have offices in England and the rest of the UK and abroad. And if you give me the performance, the financial performance, all these different indicators for the national firm, it really doesn't matter to me. Okay, these are the Wales Legal Awards, and I want to know about your performance locally. Okay, so if you can break down the numbers so that if you do have an office in another part of the country, it's not really included, because I want to know what you're doing locally. Equally, in terms of your locality, I personally, some judges might not agree, but I really want to know about your corporate social responsibility. Okay, now I don't mean that you've been out and painted a fence. Okay, if you go out and paint a fence, good for you, but it's of very little use to me and interest to me. What I really love to see is that your corporate social responsibility has followed on from something that mattered to you. So you might have come across a housing issue during your work that actually someone in your office has said, look, we should do something about this. We should help these people, or something that mattered to a member of staff, perhaps, you know, a relative of theirs was ill, and the firm rallied round to try and help that cause. Okay, so localize, make it all about your firm, and show why, and sort of bring that through to me if you can. This is a tricky one, because I know firms don't always want to talk about this, but for me personally, it's vital that I know how the firm's done financially. Okay, so I don't mean turnover. Okay, it's the old phrase is turnover is for vanity and profit is for sanity. Okay, if you can tell us your profits and compare it with other years, that's really good for me, because I might not have come across your firm before, but if you can tell me how you've done in the last year, and by the way, make it about the last year. I don't really care about how you did 2-3 years ago. Tell us your financials, and that's a really good way of sort of standing out from other firms. Okay, it's difficult to sometimes, you know, talk about these things, and I know the legal profession sometimes thinks profit is a dirty word to talk about, but it's really important to me to find out more about your firm. And linked to that is be honest. Okay, I'm not necessarily talking about lying. I'm talking about don't sugarcoat problems. Okay, so in Manchester there was a firm that relied on legal aid, and they'd had a pretty wretched year. Okay, so obviously a lot of their income was taken away, and you know, their financials weren't good, but they were honest about that, and they said, look, you know what's happening in the sector, you know what's happening to firms like us, but here's how we're going to turn it around, and here's what we've done in this year to make sure next year is going to be brilliant. And actually, I thought that was a brilliant submission, because it wasn't necessarily about how they performed on paper, but they could show me that they were thinking about the future of their firm. So they were honest, they didn't sugarcoat the problems that they're having, and actually that made for a really good submission. don't forget that obviously I write about the sector. I know if there have been job losses or offices closing, you know, there's no point trying to hide those things. And if you can, try and turn it into a positive and show how you're sort of coming back from a problem or using an issue for your advantage. Again, linked to that, I love to see an appreciation of hot topics. Okay, so what are we actually thinking about in the legal profession at the moment? What's the key issues at the moment? Obviously, the C word at the moment is all that we're thinking about and all that we seem to be writing about. Tell us, you know, how did you respond to that? Did you furlough staff? What was the thinking behind that? You know, what has happened to your financials and what have you done to facilitate remote working? You know, make it all about, you know, what we're talking about now. And you know, use that hot topic to really show what your firm's about. There's a huge issue that we're writing in the Gazette about at the moment about the treatment of young staff, whether their mental health is looked after, whether they're under too much pressure, and whether they're given enough support at work. So if you know that I've written about those issues, and I quite often bang on in tweets about those issues, you know, tell me about how you've looked after young staff. That's if the question doesn't necessarily ask about young staff, you know, maybe guide it towards that and say, look, here's how we look after our junior lawyers, and really make it a topical issue. And finally, I would say, before we go to questions and answers, don't be shy. Okay, we're really difficult in Britain about talking about how great we are, and sometimes I find I get to the end of a submission, I think, oh, you haven't really told me why you're great, and I can't really give you an award when you haven't explained why you're great. I'll just word of warning on one thing. I did judge a Solicitor of the Year award once, and the solicitor it confidentially said that his colleagues were all useless and he had loads of extra work to do to cover for how useless they were, and that's why he should win. And I don't think he got to the final. Yes, talk yourself up, but perhaps don't be too big-headed at the same time. And just finally, on client testimonies, they're useful, but I'm not necessarily going to be swayed by too many of them because they're all going to say the same thing. Okay, that's unless you've got a client that has said something really specific about how they were treated and how they benefited from your service. Just be wary of using too many because they're all the same. To be honest, a client's going to say they love the experience and this was the best firm they ever used. And you know, if I have 20 submissions saying the same thing, then that is a fairly useless bit of information. To follow my rule, I won't waffle anymore, and I'll pass you back to Emma if that's okay.
Sorry, John. Do you mind stopping your screen share for?
Oh yeah, sorry.
All right, don't worry.
Bear with me 1 second.
Great, thanks. So John's covered a lot of the things that I was going to say, which is absolutely fine and what I expected, which is why I wanted him to go first. I think in terms of, so I often get clients that I've worked with for a long time. I know the ins and outs of their business. We've worked on things like their cultural messaging, which goes back to John's point of, you know, what if you're going to say you are something, you need to back it up. And I'm a big believer in being able to do that in your marketing in general anyway. But if you, so that's fine. We've looked at, so one of the points we made that I wanted to go on to in terms of stats and figures. So quite often I've got some of those to hand. Well, when I have a client that I've been asked to write an award submission for them, and I don't often have that, I do go through exactly what John said, almost like an exam test, so a really informal interview, and we go through the questions that are going to give me the answers to that criteria that's listed against the award. So I'm not interested in the surrounding information, just really honing in, because quite often often some of these awards have word counts. They'll have boxes with the questions in, and they'll have specific word counts. So the Law Society Excellence Award is a really good example of that. Some of them have 150 words per question, so you really have to kind of stick and be very concise. So I'll ask them to go and gather a lot of information for me. So one of the things that we generally advise, or I generally advise, is that you need to allocate a lot of time to putting these awards together. Now, the 2 awards that I've talked about already, Law Society Excellence has a deadline of the 12th of June, but the Wales Legal Awards has a deadline of the 31st of May, and they were both extended to give people a little bit more time during COVID. So on paper, on a diary sense, that isn't much time, but there still is the ability to help, maybe devolve some of the work out to others. And the reason that you can tell if people have submitted their award at 11:59 p.m. on the day of the deadline, because generally they're full of those watery statements. They haven't really devoted the time to it. And as a judge, you often reflect and think, well, why have you put yourself in for this award if you just can't get that detail in? Usually there's a good 6 months notice that these awards are coming up. We all work at the last minute. I think personally I'm better working at the last minute, but with something like this, you just can't afford to do that because it does show. So some of the stats and figures that John was talking about, generally, historically, so I've had lots of clients that have done fantastic things. I only ever put them forward for an award, incidentally, if I think they've had a great achievement that year, if I think they've had a bit of a stagnant year, just doing very well as a business but not growing, or perhaps not doing something that might be eye-catching to a judge, then we hold them back and we look to progress. You don't need to win awards year on year, so that really is about your marketing and awards program plan in any event. So some of the stats that we'll include will be percentage growth year on year on the last year. It might be investment in terms of what you're looking to achieve. You may be halfway through a plan or a project, so detail where you're up to now. If it's just at the start, should you be talking about entering an award for this at that time in any event? But if you're halfway through and you're seeing real results and you're helping people and your developments meet the criteria of that award, then absolutely talk about it and perhaps some of the projections. But don't swamp the judges with business plans, but certainly be fair and open and honest, as John says. Usually a lot of the award entries I'm writing do come off, as John mentioned, on the back of some, not failure, but a crisis or a problem or a need to diversify. And so, you can be honest about that. And I think, the judges have all been in the industry. They've all been there, or people like John have seen it happen. So you're sympathetic to that. And if you can really prove and highlight what you've done, don't be afraid to share that you've had problems. That's not, you're not being highlighted as an award winner for failure. That will, generally your application doesn't even get read out in terms of the public. And also if you put mark confidential on some of the applications, it won't go any further in any event. So John's talked about client testimonials. I wanted to say exactly the same thing, so I'm glad we're on the same page there. Something about Rising Star. So I'm not going to go obviously into detail, but I sit on the Cardiff and District Law Society Committee, and they had awards recently. And when you start to unpick some of the awards that are like Rising Star, you've got some fantastic people working very diligently and astutely within firms, and that's fantastic. And we really, want you to celebrate those individuals. However, you really want to see, and that's what some of the judges for those awards really wanted to see, how they've gone a little bit further. So is there something particularly, I don't know, if it was COVID related, or they're going above and beyond that community, that CSR element? How have they highlighted, spotted something, identified a client problem, and then brought it into the firm to help and to lead, or perhaps lead a project to support that? And if that person is totally the one that is worthy of the praise for having led that project, then of course they should be put forward for the award. So detail that. Rising Star applications in particular can be really tricky. Usually junior lawyers don't know what to say. Sometimes they're a little bit too keen and aren't quite answering the questions. So I think it's really important that if you do have a junior lawyer within your firm that you feel should be highlighted, please do support them. Not only say that they should enter that category, but also help them draft it, because it's not something they've necessarily done before. It's not like applying for a job. There's a very different skill set in applying for awards. So I really do recommend that you support them in that, because there's probably hundreds of rising stars out there that just don't put themselves forward for these awards. I was going to talk about like where to find this information. This should be obvious, but I suppose a lot of things will be in your business plan. So you're going to have a lot of investment plans that you've put forwards to make a case to your firm as to why you should develop XYZ or invest in tech or spend time helping to support clients outside of your normal remit. Those plans will be regularly reviewed. So is that information easy to find? Can you share it with the person that's drafting the award entry? So if you have devolved the award writing to somebody else, either internally or externally, give them that information really, really quickly, particularly now with the deadlines looming. And obviously mark it as confidential, but find a safe way to share that, because that will be incredibly useful, rather than having maybe kind of hours on the phone and ending up in those watery statements. If you are adding in testimonials, this might be quite useful for service providers, so people are applying for services to the industry, or perhaps internal testimonials for individuals rather than teams and firms applications. Can you get your hands on them? Who do you need to go and get them? Can you devolve that to somebody else so the person that's writing the award can get on with it? You can get on with your job. Can you go out to a client and make sure they're happy to put that forward, whether that's a B2B client or a B2C client? So just a little bit of teamwork to help make that work a bit better. And then again, stick to the facts to avoid meandering. I think I know the Wales Legal Awards has a plea to be concise, but there's no clear word count. So again, you just imagine the judges are reading reams and reams of these applications. So if you want to get shortlisted, if you want to be put in front of the judges for an interview, just keep it concise and answer those questions. And then if there's some more context to be had, hopefully you could even suggest that you would love to have the opportunity to explain that in an interview. Asking to be seen as a winner is really important. I write a lot of Legal 500 and Chambers and Partners directories, and the number of people that don't ask to be ranked in a certain level is just unbelievable. So be bold, but have the evidence to back it up. But there's nothing wrong in asking for something, and I think if you genuinely feel that you've got a really strong application and you've got all the evidence there, and you feel that you should be, and you'd love to be a beacon of excellence for the sector, then by all means say that. I have also I've mentioned allocate time. Just to say, this is a time to celebrate. So if you're taking the time to do this, do yourself justice, okay? Take the time to pause, think, share the information across your team, get as much of feedback from your team as you can to put into this. This should be a moment of positive reflection. I think as well, using these award applications in a variety of different ways. So it could be that you've got an awards plan where there's a number of different awards that you want to enter. Once you've got the first one, that's a foundation. As long as you tweak it and make sure all the criteria are met for different awards, certainly you can make this award application work a little bit harder for you. And also it might help with some of your marketing content. So it's a really nice time to reflect on some of the achievements that you've had. You might have internal catch-ups, particularly when firms start to reopen after lockdown. Is it a time for you to maybe kind of gather your team around and reflect on the successes that you've had over the past 12 years and use that to motivate others? So don't just see it as like a really hard chore that has to be done. This is all your success, so definitely celebrate it. As I said, some of the key dates for award entries this year are the 12th of June for the Law Society Excellence Awards. They're a long list of criteria on the website there, and also the 31st of May for the Wales Legal Awards. The interview process is, I understand it to be the 22nd of June. They'll be held online, which I hope is something John's looking forward to doing. It's something that I don't think, well, I can't imagine any other awards process is done before, so that'd be really, really interesting. And you know, it's going to be working exactly the same way as it would in person, just without the tea and coffee, I'm afraid. So I'm just going to open up to some Q&As. We're really happy to answer any questions that you might have. Feel free to unmute yourself, and if you can't, just wave your hand and I'll give you a hand. Or if there's any comments from people that have judged previously as well, that'd be really interesting. Oh, hang on, Charlotte, I can't hear you. Hang on. I've unmuted you, but I think you've got a problem with your audio, Charlotte. Oh, there you go.
My life. Okay.
We can. Oh.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. First of all, can I just say thank you to John for taking part in this? What a huge honour for us. Thank you so much. And Emma, as usual, for being utterly amazing and professional and doing everything beautifully. My name's Charlotte Leishon, those of you that don't know me. I'm one of the founders of the Wales Legal Awards, and I'm a lawyer. I'm not someone who sits on lots of panels. I'm just a normal lawyer working in practice, and got involved with awards last year. So I didn't feel suitably qualified to do anything other than listen today. My only observation would be, having listened to both John and Emma, was if any of you are planning on entering our awards, because this relates to that, we have a panel process as well as the written submission. Just make sure that the person who comes to the panel interview is as clever as the person who's written the submission for you, because a lot of the time, and that's in no way denigrating anybody who came last year, but it was quite clear, I think, a lot of marketing people had written submissions, and then the lawyers were sent along to the panel interview, and there was a huge disparity between what was said on paper, sometimes to people's credit and sometimes to their detriment. But certainly from our point of view, the much more human side of the entries we saw when we did the panel interviews. So don't be scared when you come along, if you're shortlisted on the panel, to bring the more human element as well. That's all I was going to say. Thank you.
Thank you. I hoped you would. Thanks, Charlotte. Anybody else? Or have you ever had questions to what you've been entering awards year on year and not got anywhere, and you're not sure why? Something that's missing? Or you were too shy? Yeah, thanks, Mike.
Yeah, hi. Just on the Welsh Legal Awards, what I think is a good thing is that the bit I looked at for the category I was interested in was quite specific questions to address, which I think is very helpful to keep you. So how focused, therefore, should you be? Is there any room to go off piste a little bit, or would that be, a bad mark, or what? Or should you really try and keep very close to the questions as such?
Yeah, I think it's really difficult, isn't it? So sometimes when is this about a specific team entry rather than law firm? Yeah.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's quite easy to forget that it's for a team, and you can expand out more widely into the benefit, what the firm's been up to and all of that. And I think that's where you start to have to kind of maybe review it a little bit more. What is that helping you in terms of the achievements of your team? But having said that, there are some things like investments in tech, or a certain approach to clients, or your accessibility, or how you're recruiting and supporting people that actually benefit, how your team is operating. So I suppose that John may feel differently, but there's no harm in putting those in as bullet points if it is helping the success of the team and evidencing what you're trying to say. But yeah, it can easily slip from a team entry into a firm entry if you put too much supporting evidence in. John, what do you think? I'll unmute you.
If anything, I would advise to drill down even further. I find really good submissions are the ones where a team has identified a particular case or bit of work that they've had to do, and actually use that one piece of work and expand upon it, and who was working on it, how did they approach it, how did they deal with the client. If anything, drill down even further. I find sometimes that people entrants want to tell me so much that they sort of lose track of what was great about the work that they did. So I would, although I would love you to tell me everything great about your firm and your team, I would always advise to stay as close to the question as possible.
Absolutely. And it could be, if you've got a particular case that is that significant, then that is the reason that you're entering the award this year. And I think that there's absolutely no harm in writing about that. And if that's the weight of it, then you should have plenty of things to talk about regarding that particular matter in any event. So I hope that helps you, Michael.
Yeah, great, thanks. Yeah.
Thank you. Anybody else? Steve, you've judged a few awards in your time as well. Is there anything that you've found that's quite useful? Sorry, put me on the spot.
No, it's all right. I did think of a couple of things. I think actually you've covered most of them, but just in terms of the awards and specifically judging, you mentioned about how sort of concentrate on the performance. Have I cut out?
No, you're fine.
Sorry. But I also think sometimes they can be too focused on one aspect of something. So it could be just on the performance, but then not do the extracurricular, or the other way. So just do the extracurricular and then not concentrate on the performance. So it does need to be a bit of a rounded submission, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's going back to what I was saying about the rising stars, isn't it? There's that what John was saying about those neutral points, that we expect you to be skilled technicians, we expect you to be good lawyers, we expect you to love your clients, we expect you to have a few tier 1, tier 2 ranked lawyers. But does that make you put you on another shelf in terms of being award worthy, as it were? So I think that's looking in your soul a little bit and really looking at whether you've got something that's worth entering for this year. But that's not to say to put you off, but certainly have a real judgment as to whether what you're doing is what should be expected of you, or if you've gone above and beyond as a team, individual, or a firm, of course, as well.
Sorry, and then just a quick question for you really. What about length? I mean, what sort of length would you think, as somebody that's read them? I would prefer sort of a good summary and quite succinct, but what sort of thing do you think? Anybody else?
John, you waved your hand.
Well, succinct. I'm always conscious that I don't want to just give the best marks to the firm that begins with A, and the firm that begins with Z is going to lose. But I definitely think succinct as possible. Just to add as well, Emma, you mentioned about going above and beyond. This again might be counterintuitive to what people might think, but it's one of my bugbears is when there's an entry that says, we worked through the night, or our lawyers were still there at 5 a.m. doing, the work. Now, it may be that, you've got a foreign client and you needed to be in the office at 5 a.m, but actually, I'm just as impressed by an entry that says, we got the work done, we made sure that the client was happy, but by God, we made sure that our staff could leave at 5:30, or 5 o'clock, or whenever they needed to pick up the kids or whatever. Going above and beyond does not, in my opinion, mean making you work through the night. It's about making sure your team are happy and content and are given the best tools to do the job. So I try and steer away from sort of chest beating about how committed you are.
Yeah, absolutely. I know, I couldn't agree more, and I'm really glad you explained that, John, because particularly now when you're looking at firms, city firms, I know perhaps not here in Wales, that are thinking about having more home working. We're completely reshape the way that we're working in the legal sector due to the current climate, let alone anything else. So and that's looking at much more at well-being. So it's not the usual things that we might think of as above and beyond, i.e. spending more time. Actually, is that a good thing that you're spending more time on trying to support your clients if it's going to wear your staff out? So that's a really important point. Thanks, John. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Yeah, Nathan. So I just thanks.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me okay? Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, John and Emma. I wanted to reflect Charlotte's comments as well. It's very grateful to us all to take up your time to help us through this. I wanted to just try to nail down a little bit, if I may, on the balance between being succinct and then going into the kind of detail. Johnny already mentioned kind of nailing down on particular cases or particular clients. I think it's easy enough for us to reel off a whole long list of these individuals, well, certainly from my perspective, individuals that I help, and the lovely things they say, and the differences that you make to their case, to their life, the way that you conduct yourself, etc. But is there an opportunity, either in the interview or perhaps even afterwards, if you mention other examples that are there that you don't want to put all together in one place to overload your reading to make sure it is succinct? Is there an opportunity to then elaborate on them or to provide further examples if you reference that in your submission?
I think certainly within the interview, and again, Charlotte might be able to help here because it's something that she would have been doing last year, but they'll ask you more. They'll ask you questions. They'll put some extra context on it. They might explore something, in more depth. And certainly, if you've stood out as a shortlisted candidate, that's where you would go to the interview. But I think going back to Michael's question about length of the submission, usually you'll see about 1,000-word limit on some of the award entries, which is pretty standard. I think if obviously one of my other tips is do not draft it online. Draft it on a Word document, spell check it, check the word count or the character count, and then put it up online, because sometimes there's just an epic fail in the making, isn't there? So once you've had a read through, and obviously you can see where you're going, if you've got some words missing, if you need to clear out the clutter, take out some paragraphs and put some bullet points in there, and say again, if you get the opportunity to be shortlisted, you'd be very happy to talk about that in more depth. But if you've put it succinctly within the application, within the word count, the judges are very clever people. They'll know if you've explained it right. They'll know what you're trying to get at, and I think that's the point really that John's prepared to make, that they're not completely alien to the sector. While they may not know your firm too well, although incidentally, please don't copy and paste your About Us page from your website, which I have seen many times. Then you should be able to convey that quite clearly. But yeah, I'd say probably about 1,000, 1,500 words is more than enough content, really.
Thank you.
Anybody else? I think we've given them all the tips, John. Don't think they need to ask any questions. That's great. Okay, so I appreciate it's a beautifully sunny day, and we finished 15 minutes early. I'm just going to unmute John for a second, just to say thank you very, very much for joining us. I'm going to share the recording a little bit more widely with you all, so please feel free to pass it on. I'll put some links into some of the awards that I've mentioned, some articles that have been written about judging awards, but obviously you can replay this at any time and share it on with your marketing teams if you do have them, or agencies if you work with them. John, is there anything you want to say as a closing point?
Just one last thing. I spoke to someone who won at the Manchester Legal Awards last year, and I said, your entry was fantastic, interview was great. What was it all about? And he said, we just asked all our staff what was good about us, from receptionist to managing partner. I think sometimes there are firms whose leader, it sort of believes that they have all the answers. And actually, if you just ask all your staff, not for great details, but what makes us tick? What do you like about being here? it brings out so many details. So even though it's quite difficult because we're so remote at the moment, I would always encourage it to be a genuine team effort in terms of your submission. Good luck.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, John. Do you know what? I can agree more. I think the thing is, that's not just a point on award entries, that's marketing and your culture in general. And if you're not regularly doing that within your team, then there's something a little bit wrong there, because you can't say that you're, you know, who you are without making sure that everybody within the firm understands. And you can get so much from that experience as well to use more widely. So I definitely recommend that. I appreciate that we might have to do that virtually for now. I also appreciate that we still don't know whether we're holding the Wales Legal Awards in person, but certainly we've got some fantastic plans to make it a great success and celebration online in September. Thank you again to John, to Charlotte, for helping me to organise this, and I hope to see you all again very soon. And I'll send you a link later on. Have a lovely evening. Enjoy the sun. Take care. Bye.